Hi, and welcome to Books in Action. My name is Larry Petricaro, and I have with me tonight Audrey Rowe. She's the Program Director for the Community Coalition on Race. And under the auspices of the Community Coalition, we have something called Two Towns, One Book, or I think this year it's called Two Towns, Many Stories, perhaps.
We'll talk about that.
Well, we're going to talk about that. But before we get started on the, let's say, the literature aspect of this evening's conversation, I'd like to have Audrey give us a little bit of a background on the Community Coalition, its purpose, function, perhaps a little bit of its history, and some of the way it's organized, if you would. Right. So if you don't mind, Audrey, maybe you could just fill us in before we get started on the Two Towns, One Book.
Sure, Larry. The South Orange Maplewood Community Coalition on Race, as the name suggests, is an organization that covers both of our towns, and it's made up of people who live and work here. And our intention is to foster true integration, true racial integration among people who live here. And I emphasize the word true because we are not talking about people living next door to each other and checking off a list to say that that's integration. We're talking about really being engaged in and enriching and enhancing each other's lives. And we're talking about every aspect of the community, whether it be in our neighborhoods, in our schools, in our businesses, in our town governments, in our civil organizations, and in socializing. So that's a big order right there. And we know that many people feel that we're in a post-racial era, that the whole emphasis on racial items is passé. But we believe that that is quite the contrary. And I think that with some of the things that have surfaced recently with Ferguson, I think the whole nation now understands that there's a lot of work that needs to be done. The Community Coalition on Race was started by just grassroots, people who live here and care about this community, as they started to notice changes in the demographics and also changes, pressure in some of the attitudes. We started to see that the people who had been very homogeneous, basically white population in the town, was starting to get a little panicky about people from surrounding areas, towns starting to move in, and the demographics were changing. And there was an increase of white flight, quite frankly, residentially. So people were concerned, not just morally, but especially financially, about the values to their homes, etc., and wanted to do something to basically stop the bleeding. And so people started to meet in their homes, black and white, to talk about what we could do, and started to understand that we weren't the first or only community facing this situation, and found that there had been a community in Shaker Heights that had had a similar situation, Shaker Heights, Ohio. And so rather than reinventing the wheel, we reached out to find out what they had done and find out how it might apply or need to be modified for us here. So we started conversation with the consultant. Long story short, we actually hired him. When I say we, I'm speaking not only of the residents, but both towns, the town governments, both South Orange government and South Orange government and Maplewood Township became partners in this whole effort. And so we started the Community Coalition on Race, and started to look at how we keep this community vibrant, growing, financially viable, and be a place where all people were welcome. So we work on all fronts, as I mentioned, in the neighborhoods. We work with neighborhood associations because we feel that you build a community one neighborhood at a time. And people start where they are and then branch out from there. So we help neighborhoods or neighbors who would like to start an association to form. You don't have to be a formal neighborhood. You can just be an association who really wants to connect with your neighbors. We also have a marketing program where we try to make sure that people who are like-minded, people who appreciate living in a diverse, racially diverse community, know who we are and know that this is a very welcoming place. So we place ads in communities. Brooklyn tends to be a very frequently sending community to us. And of late, we've been getting a lot of people from Jersey City. We place ads not about the coalition, but about our community. And we help people know how they can have the best of both worlds. How you can live 28-minute train ride from Manhattan, but still have a tree and a yard and be able to have your kids walk to school. So we promote what's best about Maplewood and South Orange to people who want to move here. We also work with the faith communities because we know that beyond race, we are very diverse religiously also. And we want people to know that no matter what your persuasion happens to be, you're welcome here in our community. We try to do it in a way that's not heavy-handed, not preaching at people, but creating opportunities for people to work with folks who might be different than themselves. Because my personal experience has been that stereotypes develop when people have too little time or too little opportunity to really get to the facts. So they resort to what's quick and easy rather than really having some experience they can draw upon. So the coalition works to provide opportunities for neighbors to work together, to get to know each other, to share and know what they share. And what we're going to talk about today is one of the projects that builds on that particular premise. People who enjoy reading. You like to read, I like to read. Let's share some ideas about what we've read, and from that grow. We're all about getting beyond the smiling and nodding to what's really on people's minds, and having through those candid conversations, being able to build relationship, because that's what's really at the core of true integration, building strong relationships across race.
Well, I guess those conversations too sometimes have to be a little bit tense.
They can be.
And I'm not sure that's bad. I don't mean that in a bad sense. But sometimes I think tension is, well, for example, if you don't want your bones to break, you have to put tension on them, right? To
build
keep,
muscle.
Build the muscle, keep the bone strong. So
Absolutely.
I think tension, when it's handled properly, has the way of strengthening those relationships you're talking about, because like what you said, get past the smiling, the nodding, and get to the facts.
That's right.
Yeah.
And one of the things we do and have gotten a lot of commendation for is hosting something we call Conversations on Race, where we deliberately pick a topic of concern, and our goal is to attract people from all the different backgrounds and races. Let's talk about the issue, and let's have a small group discussion so I can listen to you, you can listen to me, and from that we can grow our perspectives.
I think I remember participating in one, but it was some time back that we had one down at the, I think it was down at the high school.
You're probably right.
Yeah,
We typically have 2 conversations a year. We usually try to do one in the spring and one in the fall.
Before we got here tonight, I took a look also at your website. You didn't mention the website, which is twotowns.org.
Yes.
And we'll try to display that, so if anybody's interested, they can look for it.
Thank you.
But it's a pretty professionally done website. I was pretty impressed with it. It's quite nice. I don't know if you have somebody that runs it for you, or
Well, actually, our executive director, Nancy Gagné, and myself, we spend a lot of time, Nancy in particular, making sure that website is current and relevant. It's a little dense. There's a lot of information, so we're working now
there's a lot of
to make it a
information
little easier to navigate and try to make it such that you can scan and see what really resonates with you and get to that, rather than feeling like you have to read through so much information. But it's a website that talks about all the different activities and events that we run. And we also want to be a go-to spot for anything relative to race. So, for example, we've got a couple of theatrical groups in the community that are doing plays coming up very soon. And we think that there's an opportunity for all of us to grow, so we'll put that on our calendar for people to check out as well.
So growth, we're all about growth.
All about growth and enriching.
Enriching, I like that.
Enriching each other's lives, that's
Good.
right.
Well, we should talk about books.
That's true.
I think we should do that. So how about a little background on how the Two Towns, One Book, or in this case, Two Towns, Many Stories, how it came about? What was the spark of recognition that made somebody say, hey, let's do this? Or was it something that maybe was done elsewhere? Shaker Heights, for example, which is, I guess, Cleveland,
if
right?
I can, let me pull us back just
Sure.
1 minute and,
Yeah.
and put Two Towns, One Book into perspective. Two Towns, One Book, or the literary arts, is just one aspect of something we've put together, which we call integration through the arts.
Okay.
We know that the arts are universal, and when people don't even speak the same language, they can connect, whether it's through music or through a photograph or a painting or photography. So we wanted to use the power of the ability of arts to connect people to build community here in Maplewood, South Orange. So with Two Towns, One Book, we're focusing on the literary arts.
Okay.
My understanding is the first time that this was done was in Seattle.
In Seattle.
Washington, back in 1998. And actually, we weren't too far behind. The first book that we included as a community read and discussion was in 1999.
Yes,
And that is why are all the black kids sitting together in the school cafeteria.
it's right there.
That's right.
Okay.
And we want, what the coalition did then and does now is to try and be relevant. I mean, that's a question we all have asked ourselves. And when we looked at our own schools, we saw it happening right here. And because it was something that really caught everyone's interest, the topic, we had over 600 people come out for that discussion. And we were able to get the author, Dr. Beverly Daniels Tatum, to actually come out. So it's an opportunity not only for the community to explore the topic, but to get some insights from the author and ask some questions and move the ball down the field in that way. So that was our first venture into Two Towns, One Book. And following that, for the next 4 years, actually, we would have different books on different topics related to race that we would put before the community as a way to come together and have a discussion with the idea that there was no right or wrong answer, but it was a way to explore and to better understand ourselves as well as to understand each other.
So that was the a way to take the literature aspect of the arts,
Exactly.
something you think that binds us all together, and look at that. So Seattle was first, and if they did it in 98, and we did it in 99, we must
were
have
close second.
we were pretty close second.
Yes.
So I was going to ask you how long it's been going on, but I guess you just told me it's been
Yes.
going on since 1999.
Well, we had a couple of breaks, in that time frame. What we find at the coalition is, we have no lack of ambition in terms of what we'd like to do, but we are actually a relatively small organization. Staff-wise, there's 2.5 people, part-time, all of us part-timers.
Yeah.
And then we have our wonderful Board of Trustees, which keeps us afloat, that helps us to work through policy issues, and then the rest is volunteers. So we always have these great ideas of what we'd like to do, and so we have to weigh sometimes in a given year, given the resources that we have, the human capital that we have, what do we do this year as opposed to what we did last year? And so for a couple of years, we set the Two Towns, One Book on the back burner. Last year, we went out and actually asked the community, how are we doing? And Two Towns, One Book came up, like, whatever happened to that?
So it was something.
People said that they really enjoyed it, and we thought it was the perfect opportunity to bring that back.
Well, we're going to have to take a break. We've got only a few seconds left in this half of the show, so we'll start off with that in the second half of the show. What we'd like to continue. So certainly enjoyed the conversation. I mean, one thing I can say is that, at least around my house, I'm known for doing a lot of talking, but I haven't had a chance to say very much. So
Sorry about that.
congratulate you on that. No, okay. So we'll be right back. If you guys could just hang in there for a few minutes, we'll be back. Hi, welcome back. I've been speaking with Audrey Rowe. We've been talking about the Community Coalition on Race, and we've spent a fair bit of time trying to understand what the Community Coalition's purpose and focus is, and then we wanted to talk about the Two Towns, One Book aspect of it, which is actually part of a larger concept, arts and integration.
Right.
I can't remember exactly
Integration
what you
through
said.
the arts.
Integration through the
Correct.
arts.
Yes.
So, the literature aspect of it being just, a subset of that. So we started to talk about how it started. It got started in Seattle. We picked it up almost immediately. Something that that on and off, you indicated that, based on resources, there were sometimes it had not, been able to do it on a yearly basis. I'm not sure you ever intended to do it on a yearly basis. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't.
Initially, we did. We've partnered with the libraries.
No, that's a good point. Who have you partnered with in doing this, and how do they help?
We partners with the libraries, both the Maplewood Memorial Library and the South Orange Public Library, and they've been wonderful. I mean, it makes a lot of sense if you're talking about books to go with people who live and breathe that,
That's
you
right.
know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they have been amazing partners, both in helping us to come up with good selections and getting the word out to the community. It's a highly trafficked area, so people, we want to promote that we're having this. That's where people are going to go and see the information. They have a great space for us to meet and discuss the books. And it's been a win-win because they're all about getting more people to read. And we're about getting people to connect and using reading as one way to do that. So we've partnered with both libraries. We also partnered with Seton Hall University for one of our years. and they had a Poetry in the Round program. And so we were able to pool our resources financially as well, because they were able to pay for one of the authors to come in that we probably would never have been able to
Right,
afford.
yeah.
And then we had the final event on campus there, on the Seton Hall campus. And this year, in the past we've partnered with a bookstore, but this year we're partnering with Words.
Words Bookstore.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do an awful lot. I mean,
They do for this
I
community.
don't know where they get all the all the people from. Are we still partnering with Seton Hall, or was that just a one-time deal, or is it something?
That is in the mix, and it kind of ebbs and flows. On this particular round, we have not determined that we're going to do that, but one of the things about the Two Towns, One Book project is that it is dynamic. It's constantly changing. For example, this year, we decided to take the concept a step further from Two Towns, One Book to Two Towns, Mini Stories.
Okay.
And that just resonated with everyone from many different perspectives. First of all, one of our key goals is trying to get more people engaged in the conversation and in actually reading.
Okay.
And with time being such a challenge for everyone, it's much easier to have someone read a story, let's say a short story,
Yes.
than to read a novel.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do going forward in 2015 is give people the option to read one of several different short stories and be able to have a discussion around that. Still everything with the same basic foundation for our selection. I think you had asked me or mentioned the question of, how do we decide what we
Right,
want to
right.
include? And we start with mission.
Okay.
Mission of the organization. We see things through the prism of racial integration. So the books that we select have to in some way touch on ethnicity, race, and helping people get a better, explore that area. We also want something that's going to be provocative, something that's going to stimulate a good conversation. We want something that is a quality read. And that's where the library helps us very much in terms of vetting the quality of the books. Many of the books we've used in the past have already been award-winning. We also want something that's accessible. Accessible physically, meaning that people can actually get their hands on the book, whether it be in paperback or an Audible book. They can borrow it from the library, or it's a price that people can't afford. And also accessible in terms of reading level, because we want this to be intergenerational. So we want it to be a book that, it's challenging in concept, but the read is not so, so difficult that people can't finish the book or really understand what the author is saying. We also pick a book where we have a good chance of getting the author to be able to actually come.
Okay.
So we wouldn't pick something with, a writer who's over in Europe or somewhere. We try to get, someone that's fairly close. And we've been very fortunate in that regard. This year's book, the author actually lives in Montclair.
That's pretty close.
Yeah, very close, very close. And I think that's the major criteria. And we try to have an author that writes from the underrepresented perspective, the perspective of the minority.
Okay, I was going to ask you what you meant by the underrepresented.
Yes.
So, so in other words, not the minority aspect of that, but that doesn't have to be black, I presume. or
Doesn't have
African
to be. In many instances, it has been.
Yes.
But one of the books, for example, we're also exploring the idea of what it means to be other, to be different, immigrant, also. And one of the books that we did, The Namesake, was set in India. So.
Yeah, I thought so. I saw that on the list, and that's what
Yes.
made me think of that, because that was an Indian author, I think,
That's
as well.
right.
may
And she
have
actually came.
been- I was going to say,
to the
I think
committee.
she was. Yeah, she
Yes.
was here.
So we've been very
Do you
fortunate.
try to balance fiction and nonfiction, or is it just whatever it turns out to be?
That's a good question. This year, the committee that helped to select the book, which consisted of our library partners, the owner of Words Bookstore, and a couple of trustees who love books from the coalition, we wrestled with that. We ended up picking a book that is nonfiction, but there's a sense that fiction has a wider appeal. So that's why we thought going with short stories or giving the short story option, we might be able to attract more people. But at the end of the day, we are very concerned about what is the message, what is the conversation about. So it has to have enough substance and connect enough with the reality that people can relate and be able to integrate what they've read into their community or into their lives.
So in that regard, fiction or nonfiction, it's kind of
It can
irrelevant
be
in that way.
either, right?
Now, the book we're doing this year, The Price of Paradise.
Yes.
And can you give us a little background on that?
This particular book, I always think of the quote that was made by Martin Luther King, how he speaks about our lives being, the mutuality, how our lives are connected. And this book brings that home from the standpoint of community. As I read through the book, I was just so struck by how many of the situations in the book mirror what we are living here in Maplewood, South Orange. It talks about how urban areas and suburban areas have their destinies intertwined, and how what happens in one location impacts the other location. And so that to focus on localism, our own little boundaries and our own little ordinances and laws, at the end becomes very short-sighted because we live in a much larger world. And like it or not, the things that are happening around us affect us. So better to be alert, to be involved, and to work together to have a better outcome for us all.
Yeah, we are part of a larger community.
Yes.
And, we, I guess I always considered Maplewood and South Orange to be sort of that first generation of suburbs, which are really, just butt up against the city. It's not like, that was kind of a pre-automobile, pre-Route 78, pre-Route 80 days, right?
Yes.
So, because I think about, as growing up, these were, even though I was that far from here, they seemed like they were very far away, and certainly in terms of, what the culture was like growing up in Newark and
Yes.
East Orange, the expectation of what it would be, how different it was. South Orange, I think, at one time had the highest per capita income in the country. It
Yes,
was
it did.
very, very different. And yet, as you point out, you're going to cross the street and you're going to be in one city and the other, one to the other.
Well, in this book, I mean, I'm almost finished. I'm about 3/4 through the book. And as I read it, I was saying, this is something I would love for our community to have a discussion about, because there are times when I found myself dropping my head a little bit as I saw myself in some of the behaviors that he identified. He talks about this whole concept of NIMBY, not in my backyard. We all want things to happen, but we don't want it to happen here. Let it happen over
Somewhere
there.
else, yeah.
Build the lower income housing over there. Do those things that are not so not so nice somewhere else, but they've got to be somewhere.
Yeah.
And to the extent that we're not willing to share the burdens, that's how you create ghetto situations, because everybody's pushing those things that they don't want into one area. Whereas if the situations were mutually shared, it wouldn't present the problems that it present. He tells the stories in a narrative that's very compelling and almost exciting. He tells a story about a drive-by shooting
Where?
in the book,
In the book.
and his stories aren't just about this area. He's got stories that happen in Ohio, all over the country.
Okay.
He has a story in Akron, Ohio, where he talks about this woman who gets sued for having her daughter in the school district in Akron, when she actually lives in another community. And then he peels that back to talk about how that whole thing happens. So it really kind of opens up a space for people to think about not just protecting what they have, but how by not opening up to other people, in the long term, everybody has a negative impact.
Yeah, I mean, you don't always protect by being isolation. You can't. I don't think you can do that. Look, just kind of a personal opinion. I mean, it's kind of conversation that we all need to have. I mean, because let's face it, a city like Newark or a city like Irvington isn't going to go away. It's still going to be on the border one way or another.
Absolutely.
So how you address that proximity, I guess.
And rather than viewing them as a threat, it talks about how do we join in an effort to have a better life for us all.
Yeah, no, that's certainly a critical thing, and that does make for a difficult discussion. But, so we're still talking about books. Was this a unanimous choice? Does it have to be a unanimous choice, or?
It was not a unanimous choice because some people thought that it might be a little academic for
Okay,
people.
okay.
I found that it's a great blend between storytelling and a lot of facts too. And from that standpoint, I think we have a good chance of having a broader audience because there are some people who want the facts, just the facts. So this is not just about opinion. He weaves into the book a lot of research and statistical data so that you're grounded, not just someone's personal opinion, but in the reality of what's really going on.
We are beginning to run out of time. When is when will the discussions be?
Yes.
So we should probably
Well,
let
we're
people know.
encouraging people to start now. We
Start now to
have
read.
copies of the book at the library, and we have electronic copies at the library. We also have copies that will be available at Word's Bookstore. And then the author is actually going to be here at the Woodland, previously the Women's Club,
Okay.
on November the 19th
Well,
at 7:30. And we're asking people to come out, even if you haven't read the book, though I guarantee you'll get much more out of it if you have. The author's going to read some excerpts from the book. That's how I first discovered it. He's very entertaining. And then we're going to have small group discussions. So it's not just about reading what someone else has said and what they think, but us having to have a conversations among ourselves about what do we think about this and what do we do, if anything, in response to this in our community.
Okay. Well, Audrey, thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
We're just about out of time, so trying to think if there's any last bit of advice or words that we should put out there. But I guess read the book if you can. November 19th?
Yes, go to the website
November
for more
19th.
information.
Go to the website, twotowns.org. I think what you'll find there is more than just Two Towns, one book. I was surprised at the number of different things that are being done, something that's, shame on me for not understanding. So, well, thank you all for joining us, and Audrey, thank you for
Thank
taking
you
the
for
time.
having
I
me.
appreciate it very much.